Welcome to the TMZ podcast. Derek here with Eric filling in for Charlie and Charlie.
Yeah.
We've got Derek and Eric. We always like to keep a rhyme scheme.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So we've got a 4-pack of stories, lots of interesting stuff going on. We've got some podcast news with the Kelce brothers. We've got J-Lo and Ben's divorce saga, which
Messy.
continuing to just get sloppy. I think we're just at the beginning of that. Diddy has fired back in the Rodney Jones lawsuit. He wants that thing thrown out. We'll get into that. And then, of course, there's some zoo news about a woman who climbed a fence to get into a tiger enclosure. But
what is wrong with people?
What is wrong with people? I have a theory, and I'm going to get into it.
Okay.
So, first things first, Travis and Jason Kelce just inked a massive podcast deal for $100 million.
That's insane, just the number, but I get it.
So their podcast, The New Heights with Jason and Travis, it's massive. And the podcast actually started getting big even pre-Taylor. But when Travis started dating Taylor Swift, it was just like gasoline on a fire. This thing exploded. It's now become a popular podcast on a level with like the Joe Rogans of the world, those ones that get millions and millions of listens, and that can be quite lucrative.
Millions and millions of dollars.
It's a lot of money.
$100 million. Remember, wasn't the podcast where Travis announced that he was shooting a shot with Taylor, basically? He told the story about wanting to meet her, so it was sort of the beginning of their relationship.
They folded his personal life into the podcast very cagily. I mean, these guys know what they're doing. They're two football bros. They actually have real chemistry. They get along. It's a fun podcast to listen to. But honestly, people aren't there for the sports anymore. I think they're there for the drama and the gossip and him talking about going to Taylor's concert.
What's been so smart for them is they keep it a lot about the football. So the people who were already there before Taylor and Travis are still listening.
Right.
They still like it. Yeah, like you said, they fold in just enough of the stuff for all the new listeners and all the Swifties who are listening to stay interested. They're keeping that balance there.
Yeah, people see a deal like this, $100 million over 3 years. It's a massive amount of money, but you have to remember podcasts like radio. Remember Howard Stern used to get those massive deals? It's because they occupy so much time. You can really run a lot of ads against a podcast because it runs for hours. It's like a radio show. Joe Rogan you listen to for 2+ hours sometimes, and they run tons of ads against these things, and that's why you get these eye-popping numbers. Even in an age where television is declining and everything is supposed to be on YouTube, there's still a huge podcast audience.
And this $100 million covers everything they've already done. It's all the content, so they have access to the previous episodes, and it's a 3-year deal, and probably a lot of it, because now Jason is retired, and Travis, who knows how much longer he's going to play. He's already started dropping hints. He's eyeing what's coming next.
Oh, yeah, he's hosting game shows, like Who's Smarter Than a Celebrity.
Here's the thing. For 3 years, if he and Taylor stay together, get married, have a kid, then that's $100 million well spent because they're going to announce all of it probably there or just discuss it. Or if he breaks up with her, they'll be discussing that, and people will tune in for that. So either way, it's worth the money.
It's a smart deal for Wondery, which is a big name in the podcast business. They always have this card in their back pocket. You're right. Breakup will be huge news and so forth. And they could always bring Taylor on. And if you have Taylor Swift on a podcast episode, it will explode. I mean, just by the nature of her fan base and so forth. So this was a smart deal.
She's never been on it, right? I don't believe she's ever been on it.
Taylor has actually been interviewed on it. They've talked about
no, because we would have covered that if she did. So now that they've got this deal, and not that she has to do it, but her tour is having a break now. If she popped on just to say hi, it would be such a big deal for the podcast.
You got to wonder if when they inked this deal, they said, come on, can we bring her on as we roll out this deal to sort of like kickstart it and get momentum? They're very smart business guys. I give these guys a lot of credit. The iron is very hot, and they're striking while it's hot. You sort of lock in these huge deals. Their popularity may explode, may wane, but it's good to have a 9-figure podcast.
Either way, they're set for life.
They're set for life. This is generational wealth. All right. Let's move on. Now we've talked about generational wealth. It's a good segue for how do you divide it up? Because Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck's divorce is getting extremely messy because they don't have that prenup. And we have been fascinated by this story.
Wild.
Here's my theory. Before we get into like how crazy it is not to have a prenup, my theory was she said, we're really in love. This is forever now. We're mature. We're older. They both had generational wealth coming into the marriage. My thought was they said, why do we need to muck this up with a contract between us? This is now forever, and we each have our separate property. We're older now. We've passed our peak earning years. Whatever we earn going forward, we'll split it up anyway, and we'll each have our $100 million we came into the marriage with, or whatever that was. I think that's why they didn't have a prenup. I wasn't as surprised. Nevertheless, it has made the divorce negotiations very complicated.
That's the thing. If they thought it was going to be forever and don't get a prenup because of that, okay, that's
Sure.
what they thought.
Everybody
thinks that. It's always forever. You never go into a marriage thinking this is going to be for a year and a half. But then you could think, like you said, they're both incredibly wealthy.
Right.
Neither one of them needs money. I don't think there's going to be any spousal support or anything like that. So they could have just been like, if it doesn't work, we just walk away.
That's
it's
right.
Fine. And I could have believed that because, like we said, they're both so accomplished and so wealthy. They don't need anything from each other. But then why is this being such a messy divorce, and why is it taking so long?
I think what's happening now is, and again, one more point about prenups, they're really for couples where there's a huge disparity in wealth, and where one party is a billionaire and he marries a trophy, or vice versa, or however it is. Someone brings a lot of money into the marriage, and someone brings very little, so you work out that, hey, that's my separate property, and when we divorce, you'll be okay. But
like
anyway,
if Taylor and Travis get married, I would assume she'd want a prenup.
Oh, I think she'll
as
want a
wealthy
prenup.
as he is.
There's a huge disparity, nevertheless.
Yeah.
But, what's really mucking this up is I think Jennifer Lopez is feeling very embarrassed and wounded. A lot of reports coming out that she put her heart on the line. She always wears it on her sleeve. She got back with Ben despite misgivings by some people to say, you guys aren't really right for each other. It didn't work the first time around. And then it crumbled so quickly, she feels embarrassed and she feels like he misled her in some way. So now I think she's looking to extract her pound of flesh. She's like, we don't have a prenup. I don't like you. I think things have gotten sort of very messy. And he has this Artist Equity. That's his production company with his best pal, Matt Damon. Remember when this thing rolled out, they were like, hey, actors are producing their own stuff. We're the big stars. We should have a bigger piece of the pie and we can bankroll our own things because we both have massive amounts of money now. They produce a lot of stuff. They produced Air. They've got sort of good taste. They always had. Good Will Hunting was like their initial project. And there's a lot of money that's been generated on the production side and on their salaries just as actors.
That wouldn't affect Matt Damon, though, because it would be just half of Ben Affleck's half.
That's right. That's right. So Matt Damon's stuff is clean, but Ben Affleck's, his half of Artist Equity could be split in half with J-Lo.
And it's only things they've done in the last year and a half, since the marriage.
That's right.
Since
It's
2022.
all
But he had Air come out, The Instigators he produced, The Accountant 2 he's filming right now, which has not come out yet, but she would get half of that.
It's a franchise.
Then he's got half of her Atlas film, This Is Me Now, the album, The Mother, Shotgun Wedding. She's got all these projects too. So they would get half of all of that.
It's complicated. They're such big actors and such big entertainers that their deals aren't like, I made $20 million on this movie, here's $10 million. They get residuals over time, they get earnouts. So you're talking about sharing and dividing up money that is going to be earned over a period of time. That gets messy. And they're not sort of communicating very well, according to most reports. And you do need to get into a room and say, all right, let's be mature about this. How are we going to break this up? I don't think they're at that point, and I think that's why she precipitously ran to court on the anniversary of one of their weddings and said, I'm divorcing you. That was a big signal to me that it's not going to be a pleasant process.
Right. And they've still got that giant mansion they bought. They've got to divvy that up if and when that thing sells.
What an albatross, right? Because the housing market is not doing particularly well. With interest rates coming down, it might get a little bit better, but trying to move a $68 million house is always quite difficult. Not many buyers.
Ben and Jen, it's over, but it ain't over yet.
That's right. And when we talk about Jen, what a segue again. We got to talk about Diddy.
Her ex. Her other ex.
Yeah, her other ex, who is in a world of pain. I mean, he's still got the federal investigation. There's been no charges yet in those cases, but there are a lot of civil suits. And one of those big civil suits was Rodney Jones, who basically...
He's a producer, videographer, person in Diddy's orbit, I guess.
That's right.
There's a lot of people in Diddy's orbit.
He's got a lot of photographs. He's got a lot of receipts, as they like to say. And he filed a lawsuit saying he witnessed sex trafficking. He witnessed, I think, even murder at some point. There was like a shooting at a Diddy studio that he says Diddy was involved in a cover-up of. I mean, the allegations in his lawsuit were among the most salacious of any of the lawsuits.
Right.
And he had a lot of photographs, and he name-dropped and so forth, brought in other people. Diddy is now fired back.
He wants it dismissed completely.
He wants it thrown out. He's saying there are a host of problems. A lot of them are technical, so people have to understand when a lawsuit's filed, everything is just written into a complaint, and you have to deal with that complaint on its face and say, even looking at this thing without any discovery, without any additional witnesses or depositions or anything like that, it's defective and should be thrown out. So a lot of it is technical, but that doesn't mean he's hiding. He's just saying, even on its face, we got to throw this out. It just doesn't pass the test.
And it doesn't help for Jones. There was a video he posted with with a rapper named Uncle Murda where they were laughing about the lawsuit, and Jones said that Diddy had to pay him that money by Monday.
Yeah,
And that makes it sound like a cash grab, which is what Diddy is saying it is.
That's right. And this is the lawyer who filed it also has had disciplinary issues as a lawyer, where he has filed salacious allegations, been accused of trying to make cash grabs and just embarrassing people so that they'll pay him off.
Right.
And dismiss
like one of the things he's suing for is emotional distress. And Diddy's like, you don't even say what that's about. You just said emotional distress.
That's right.
Based on what?
And also, you don't seem that distressed. You're here joking about it on an X video.
Pay me my money.
Pay me my money.
Right.
That's how I handle my business. So these kind of optics, they don't actually go to the merits of what he's saying. All that stuff could have happened, and you could respond to it by saying, hey, pay me my money, and going on X. They don't really directly relate, but they cast doubt on your credibility. And credibility is everything. And he's going to have to prove these things happened by his word.
And to Diddy's point, and who knows about this? It hasn't gone to court or hasn't been dismissed yet or gone to trial or anything like that. But when you are a target, Diddy is a target right now. And that's not saying he didn't do things.
Without question.
But when you have all that going, there will be people who will be like, oh, I can jump in on that. Like we've seen over the years with Chris Brown, who had his own genuine legal troubles over the years. There have been times where people have accused him of things that were dismissed because they just weren't true.
You're 100% right. This is a difficult time for him. There are opportunistic people who sense that a celebrity or someone with a lot of money is in trouble. We've seen it in Harvey Weinstein. We've seen it in Bill Cosby. A lot of the lawsuits have merit. We don't want to sort of cast any aspersions.
No, and this not necessarily, but that's sort of Diddy's claim. And whatever the truth is with this Rodney Jones claim, yeah, Diddy is someone that people would go after, but then also he could just say that to try and dismiss actual claims.
That's right.
It goes both ways. I don't know.
That's exactly right.
We'll see how it all plays out.
And look, he's lived a very sort of colorful life, let's say, and there's going to be unsavory episodes that don't amount to a tort, which is a civil offense, don't amount to a crime, just amount to someone who has had access to a lot of things and had a life where he was able to sort of push the boundaries in many, many ways. This is all very embarrassing for Diddy. He's sort of hunkered down. He's got a lot of lawyers. He's probably hemorrhaging money. All of his business deals are gone, and you're just paying lawyers. It's not getting better for him right now, but he does have such a massive war chest of money that he can fight these fights. And he's going to fight this Rodney Jones lawsuit. I think this is one of the more complicated ones for him because there's so many sort of photos and text messages and so forth. And the guy said he was shorted money and all sorts of allegations. I think he wants to handle this one because it's got maybe some of the most damaging allegations, and then he'll handle the rest.
Well, and then that's also, it's if Diddy can say, oh, well, this guy didn't have a real case. And if he gets that dismissed, then he can say, well, all of it is. That's a way to start positioning, like, see, people just come after me.
That's 100% right. You're right. The dominoes can fall in either direction. And he wants to push a domino in his favor, and you're right. It could have a snowball effect where people say, hey, if this guy was lying, maybe all those women are lying and so forth. That could have a positive impact for him. I'm not sure what he does with the overarching federal investigation.
Yeah, you
That's
can't get out of
a
that.
problem for him. All right, let's move on to our final story of the day, which is our almost news segment. And I'd say this is pretty close to news, and I have a theory about what happened. This is a woman who's been charged with climbing over a zoo fence to pet a tiger in New Jersey. Police identified, they charged this woman. She's seen on video inside a tiger enclosure, kind of looking to pet a massive tiger.
And it lunges at her.
And she gets a little scared, sort of turns around and tries to get out of the enclosure. Unclear why she was in there in the first place. My theory for this person, who's now been charged with, I think, trespassing charge and 2 citations for general misconduct. Those are pretty light offenses, I'll be honest with you. And I think what we have in the world is people want to do things that are outrageous as long as the consequences are fairly minor. This is like true of streakers, right?
Yeah.
You go to a baseball game, you run naked on the field, you're going to become popular and famous for a brief moment as the person who ran naked on the field, and the punishment is relatively minor. It's not pleasant to get tackled by cops while you're
this
naked.
is a trespassing charge.
It's a trespassing
charge. And she did it twice. Not only the tiger enclosure, she broke into a bear paddock too. So
people are craving viral moments. They're craving TikTok fame. We are covering it because it's outlandish, right? I mean, it's crazy to see a human being that close to a tiger in kind of shorts at the zoo.
Yeah.
So this will get some coverage, and there's no way around people wanting to do these kind of things as long as the offenses are minor. You can't make the offense more severe. It's like we're not going to kill people or
But it's dumb because you could die from something like this.
But you really could.
And then the thing is, and people like the zoo are angry because if the tiger somehow mauled her and maybe killed her, well, then you have to put the tiger down.
That's right.
But why? She came and got in the tiger's face.
It's ridiculous on so many levels. Also, she does sort of survive it. That sort of encourages other people to say, hey, maybe I can get in a tiger enclosure. She survived.
Yeah.
She pet the tiger. I want to pet a tiger. There is a feeling when you're young and immature and pretty stupid that you want to do these things.
Yeah.
I've been to a zoo and I'm like, man, I wish I could get in there and like really mix it up with the
They would
animals.
just put you,
but it's
they wouldn't
silly.
keep you. They wouldn't let you back out.
Oh,
Like, oh, look at this.
I would-
this example here to come look at.
I'd start a whole new life with my bear family
Yeah.
or my
you know,
tiger
like
family.
don't climb into zoo enclosure. Just say Haktua in an interview and get famous that way.
I
Don't
agree.
don't try and touch a wild tiger or a tiger in a zoo. Just
Bill Maher will still talk to you if you just say Haktua.
Yeah,
It's
you
fine.
don't
You
need
can
to-
get on that podcast.
you don't need to potentially get yourself mauled.
So anyway, the woman's name is Zaire Dennis. She is going to be charged for this infraction, but like I said, it's not going to be a slap on the wrist. She now has a record over getting into a tiger enclosure. This is not good for your life in general,
And
but
she probably can't go to the zoo anymore.
that's it.
They probably
Yeah,
got her picture in the front, like, don't let this woman in.
that's it. No circuses and no zoos for you. All right, let's.
Circuses don't have animals anymore. They're
This
getting
is
rid
true.
of that.
This
That's
is
right.
true. We've at least moved in a positive direction on that
Right.
front. Let's do a little today in history. This is Charlie Neff's segment about what happened on this day
Yeah.
in other dates. I love it.
I do too. Well, first of all, today is National Banana Lovers Day.
I love that. Love bananas.
Yeah, bananas are good.
Yeah.
I don't like bananas.
We got someone in the back who makes banana bread all the time. It's a fantastic bread.
Yeah, rotten. It's good to get bananas just so they can rot, just so you can make banana bread.
It's perfect.
That's
Yeah, throw
really
some
the
chocolate
main
chips in
thing.
there, a few walnuts. You're in good company. 1859. I like this. Petroleum was discovered in Titusville, Pennsylvania. Not yet made into petroleum jelly,
We'll get to that in a future date.
but that's become a very important product as well. And then you give us our last one, which is
Well, you missed. It's,
oh, I did. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
missed. In 1955, the first copy of the Guinness Book of World Records was issued. You and I are of a certain age. Wasn't that incredibly compelling when you were a kid? I had
Oh,
the
yeah.
Guinness Book. There were certain pictures that everyone knew. The two heavy guys on the motorcycle were
Right.
the fat twins. You had Robert Wadlow, the world's tallest human who's
Yeah.
ever existed, by the way. The man
Yeah.
was
almost 9 feet.
almost 9 feet tall. Incredible height. To see pictures of him, we still haven't had someone taller than that. Would make Shaq look like
Yeah.
a sort of child. I always loved that book. It was fun. It was informative. My kids love it.
There's some dumb things in it too, and I wonder, did people do those dumb things before 1955? It's like, oh, the largest kazoo orchestra
Right.
in history. Like, okay,
Right. Most times hopping on one foot. There were always
Yeah.
people trying to break
Weird
records.
stuff.
Have you ever seen people break walnuts with their forehead across the table? I see a lot of videos of that. All right. Give me our last one. You're our music
I
guy.
love
Eric, of
this.
course, has his Get to the Hook podcast. It's every Wednesday with Charles Ladibodier, except for this week.
this week you co-hosted. We talked about Phil Collins.
That's right. But
Uh,
give us a little music.
This date in history, significant. 30 years ago,
30 years
Boys
ago
to
the
Men
day.
hit number one with "I'll Make Love to You," and people sleep on Boys to Men these days, and it bothers me because they have 3 of the 10 biggest hits of all time, and they broke a record 3 times. So in '92, "Into the Road" is number one for 13 weeks. That broke the record for longest number one ever. Whitney Houston beats them by a week with "I'll Always Love You." Then they retie the record with "I'll Make Love to You" at 14 weeks at number one, starting today. Then in '95, they get 16 weeks at number one with Mariah Carey, and that record stood for 25 years.
So combined, those records are the most of any band to have number one hits and weeks on the number one.
For 3
For
songs?
3
Yeah,
songs. It's
that's-
incredible.
that's-
I mean, that's Despacito times 3, right?
Yeah, imagine like having a hit that size 3 times.
It's incredible. And you're right. They're not forgotten. Obviously,
No,
people
no.
our age know Boys to Men, but they're not often like thought of or heralded in the way that they should. And I love them. They've still got great voices. They're always friendly to us at the airport when
Yeah, I
we
love
get
Boyz
them.
II Men.
They're very grounded in a certain way. They're not outlandish. And good to give them a little shout out.
And there are probably a lot of people turning 30 years old in 9 months because the song hit number
This
one.
is true. It was a good love making song. All right, that'll do it for us. We'll see you guys next time.